Hi everyone. So the story I'm telling is called Strange Wedding Gifts, but really it's about being open to gifts from the Creator. So once there was a boy, an orphan boy, or a young man, and he worked for one of the prominent people in the village who had an inn. He had an inn and he had a whiskey distillery. And this boy who worked for him would sometimes go to the nearby town to buy supplies, to buy whiskey, to buy the things he needed for his boss. And whenever he had extra time, this orphan boy, would go to his teacher, his Kabbalist. One day, the young lad, goes to his Kabbalist and he says, I'm all by myself. I'm an orphan. I have no one. I just work for my boss. I have no one to be with. And his teacher says, you know what? I have a girl who's been living with us, who's an orphan. Well, I've taken care of her. But maybe she'll want to come with you and work for your boss. That way, you could work together. And he goes to the girl and he asks her, would you like to go with this boy to work together in this inn? And she is so happy. She says, of course I'll go. So they set out on the journey back to the town. And the boy is now telling her, listen, instead of taking your salary every 2 weeks, leave your salary with our boss and he'll save it up for you. And then you'll have a lot of money in 6 months. And she says, wow, that's a great idea. That's what I'm going to do. And so 6 months, they worked hard. They didn't take any salary. And they let their boss keep it. And something unfortunate happened. At the end of the 6 months, the innkeeper, the boss's business, was doing very, very bad. And it failed. And in the end, he didn't have any money to pay his employees. He didn't have any money to give these 2 orphans. So, of course, they were so disappointed. But they didn't lose heart. They weren't upset. They said, you know what? We're going to find other jobs, and we'll see what happens. And so they went, and they found jobs, and they worked for a year at their new jobs, and they did the same thing. They said, you know what? We're not going to take money, and in a year from now, we're going to have a lot of money. And that's exactly what they did. So they took the money after the year, and they said, you know what? Let's move somewhere better. Now we can open our own business. And we don't have to work for anybody anymore. We have like 100 rubles, which was probably thousands of dollars back then. So they decided they were going to leave town and find better jobs. And on the way, the man sees a beggar standing on the street. And he gets closer to the beggar, and he realizes it's his old boss. He's become a beggar. He has nothing. His clothes are all dirty and disgusting, and he looks like he hasn't eaten in days. And the man says to him, oh my gosh, what happened? I didn't realize, I knew you lost everything, but I didn't realize you lost everything and you became a beggar. And his old boss says to him, all I need is 100 rubles and I can pull myself together. And the man looks at him, he says, oh my gosh, that's what me and my partner have done. We've made 100 rubles. And he goes back to the girl and he says, I saw our old boss and he has nothing. And he says that if we give him 100 rubles, he can get back on his feet. She remembers everything this man had done for her. And she says to him, of course, let's give him the 100 rubles and let's help him get back on his feet. So they go back to him and they give him the money. And he's shocked. The man is shocked. How can you give it to me? And they say to him, you know what? We're strong. We're young. We'll make the money again. Don't worry. So he goes and he puts the money in his business. And they're looking at each other. Now they've given everything up. And all of a sudden, she says to him, you know what? Let's get married. And he didn't even realize that they had feelings for each other. And he says, you know what? Let's get married. But then all of a sudden, they stopped and said, oh my gosh, we have no money. How are we going to get married? So they couldn't get married just yet. So they decided that they were going to go work as wood gatherers. They would go to the woods, gather wood, and sell it to make money so that they would have enough money to get married. And that's what they did. They would load their wagon, they would bring it to town and sell it to the people there. One day, they found an inn that was on the side, And it became their favorite place to be, their favorite place to sell the wood to, because all the travelers that would, come and go would be there, and they would see all these people. One day they found out that their teacher, his teacher, the Kabbalist, was coming to town, and he was in the inn. So both of them quickly took all the wood, put it in the carriage, and went into the inn. They saw their teacher, and they both were with open arms and said, "It's been such a long time since we've seen you. We're so happy to see you." And they sit down, and they tell them their whole story. And they tell them how they're saving up to get married. And he says to them, "Why don't you get married tonight?" And they look at each other, and they're like, "Of course, we would love to get married with you and have all these people here as part of our wedding, but we don't have money." And the innkeeper says to them, "You know what? I'll take care of the food." And the people that were in the inn decided to give them the clothes, fancy clothes to get dressed in, because they didn't have a wedding gown or a suit or anything. They came from the woods. So they put together the wedding, and they get married, and the celebration is happening, and they're dancing, and they're happy, and everyone is so happy. And the Kabbalist says to them, "Are you ready to hear my gift?" And they're sitting there shocked, like, "Oh my gosh, there's a gift? But you didn't even know we were going to get married." And he says to them, "As my gift, I'm going to give you the village." And they're looking at each other like, "What does that mean? What do you mean, give me the village?" Okay. They thought it was weird, but they kept on dancing and they kept on singing. Then all of a sudden, one of the people there says to them, "I'm going to give you the watermill." And now they're looking at each other like, what is going on here? These people are weird. But they keep on dancing, they keep on singing. And then another person says, "I'm going to give you 1,000 rubles. And another one says, "I'm going to give you another 1,000 rubles. And the bride and groom are perplexed completely. They have no idea what's going on, but they keep on going. They finish the wedding. Everyone is happy. And the next day, they get up, and of course, they have to go to work in the woods like a usual day. And when they reach the densest part of the woods, all of a sudden, they hear something in a swampy area. And they see a young man, like in quicksand, sinking. And he's crying out to them because he hardly has a voice. And he tells them, "Help me, I'm sinking, I'm weak, I can't fight this anymore." And of course, now, without thinking, the man takes their jackets and he ties them together. And he gives it to the man and he pulls them out. And the man is finally breathing, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, you've saved my life." And they look at him and they say, "Who are you?" And he says, "My name is George, and I was supposed to get married last night, and I had gone out to the woods to hunt to bring food back and surprise everybody, and I fell in the quicksand. And that was 12 hours ago. And if you guys hadn't come to save me, I would have drowned." And they're, of course, so happy, and they want to take him back to the town. And they say, "Okay, let's take you back." And he says, "My father is the squire of the town." Basically, his father owned the town. "And, yesterday I almost died, and I want to repay you." So, of course, they bring him back, and his parents are beyond worried, and they're shocked, and they're so happy to see him. And they look at the couple, and they say, "You've saved our son. We want to repay you." And the father says, "I'm going to give you the town as a gift." And the mother says, "Yes, and as for my appreciation, I'm going to give you the watermill as a gift." And all of a sudden, the couple are looking at each other, and they realized what had happened the night before. Those gifts were real, and they had come from the Creator. And they became very wealthy, and they took care of all the orphans in the town. So remember, all the gifts are there for us. They're all available. And it's always good to be able to help someone and think beyond our picture. If they hadn't helped this man and saved his life, they wouldn't have opened the place for gifts.